Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Retained Recruiter Show. My name is James.
And my name is Jo.
Welcome on the 1st of March, the first day of meteorological spring, St. David's Day, and also in the UK, Shrove Tuesday or Pancake Day. So no doubt Jo and I will be sort of, flipping pancakes later on, Jo, perhaps.
Yeah, that's literally the rest of the day planned.
Yeah. Well, listen, we're delighted you joined us. And if you've been watching this series along, we're actually sort of very much focused on helping recruitment business owners look at transitioning their service away from transactional contingent recruitment to more of a retained recruitment consultative sale. And along the way, there are lots of different pieces of the jigsaw that we want to help people with. And today, we're going to be talking about how to make yourself more attractive to candidates. That's quite difficult for me, Jo, but there we go. Let's see how we go through. So what are we going to be covering on today's session, Jo?
So 3 points, as always, rule of three. So the first thing we're going to look at is how to attract and build really good quality relationships with good candidates. So that's the first thing that we're going to look at. I suppose really that could take up the whole half an hour in itself. But two other things that we want to talk about, I think, which are really related to that, are all around the crucial, but I think often misused or least used tools and resources that we have or should have in our arsenal in order to attract and engage and build high quality relationships with candidates. So we're going to talk a bit about behavioural assessment. We're going to talk a little bit about our candidate packs, which we have, which we term as the job spec on steroids, and how these things actually help you to engage better candidates. A lot of people, I think that these things are harder work and will put people off. They don't. They put the right people off, if that makes sense. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Good. Well, I think it's so topical at the moment because obviously we all know how tough the market is at the moment in terms of identifying and attracting candidates. So that's why we're focusing today very much on helping you, come up with some new techniques or to consider some things that you can do differently to make yourself more attractive to candidates. And for me, over the last 30 years, it's, the candidate side of recruitment has always been one that's frustrated me because, the commoditization of candidates and people being, treated, I think, really, really poorly. And I actually experienced this, Jo, myself recently. My son, who's 18, he put in an application and then he had to do some assessment center. And at the end, he got his result back, which was a negative, unfortunately. But and it's clear, I said, listen, we don't have time to talk to you. There's no feedback mechanism. So if it's a negative, then please don't get back in touch with us. Now, it was a recruitment experience, that was really poor. But to me, it highlighted things that I've seen going on for years and years and years in terms of the fact that how poorly candidates treat us. And, we do try and focus a little bit more on retained recruitment, not executive search. We cover that as well. So this isn't about the high end. This is about dealing at roles 40, 50K and above and actually delivering a different type of service. And even at that level, at the bottom end of that salary scale, I think the thing I want to leave in people's minds today is just to remember that candidates are clients in disguise. Today's candidate is tomorrow's client. So if you treat people badly, then they're going to treat that. And I remember a recruitment exercise I was doing, and I was doing. We used to use the phrase regret. So we were regretting candidates, and we had a very specific process because I truly believe in looking after candidates. And that process was to at least write to them and say, unfortunately, on this occasion, you've not been successful. Here are a few reasons as to why. Whether it's the volume of applications, the fact that people are better qualified, suited. But we will continue to search on your behalf and be back in touch. I remember on this one exercise how many responses I got back from the candidates who I'd rejected to say, so thank you so much. I know it's not what I wanted. It's not the outcome I wanted, but thank you so much for letting me know. Most of the time, I never hear back from recruiters. And I think that's the sort of feeling you've got to give candidates that, they're not just a number. Now, sometimes, when we go through high volumes, of course, there are some candidates who apply for jobs, but the candidates who apply for everything. And that they aren't the right candidates, but you've still got to treat them like people and not just, treat them like a piece of dirt on your shoe. So what do you want to talk about first, Jo, in terms of how you can make yourself more attractive?
Well, I think you raise a number of good points there. I think we could have gone off on about 25 different tangents at that point. We can start with point one. We'll try and be methodical, process driven about this, because that is pretty much my first tip when it comes to attracting and engaging a really good network of candidates. So how to attract and build quality relationships with great candidates. So I have an issue with a lot of things, but I also have an issue with the word candidate. And I think that we get mixed up with what a candidate is. A candidate is a 2-page CV. It's a transactional entity. You said it before, you know, candidates are still people. And I know everyone, the eye roll, I can see the eye roll going on LinkedIn now, but candidates are people. We have all been candidates. And so we need to treat, this is stage 1, by the way, and James will correct me in a minute. Stage 1 is you need to treat candidates as you would want to be treated. And we get lost in the melee of high volume, fastest finger first, race to the bottom recruitment. And we don't give ourselves the time and the opportunity to actually have really good relationships with candidates. So this whole thing goes back, I think, in my head, to 2 things. The first thing that I think it goes back to is you've got to be working a lower number of jobs. You've got to be working a lower number of exclusive retained jobs, because if you do that, the ability to spend longer in the candidate market, and candidates aren't just people who you send to jobs. I mean, I'm not massively keen on the word talent either, but I think we need to talk about a candidate network as having various levels. So the top 20% of people who are actively looking for a job, they're easy to find. They'll apply to your adverts. They'll have up-to-date CVs. You've then got 30% conversely at the bottom who are passive, who aren't looking for a new opportunity right now. But what you've got in the middle is this 50%. Now, you can't get to them. They're not going to really come to you. Or if they are, it's going to be after seeing you consistently, seeing good, high-quality stuff consistently over a period of time. It will attract them to you. So you have to have really good marketing and social media strategies. But the second thing is you have to get to them. So you have to be proactive, and you're going to have more than one conversation. You're going to have to send more than one message. So consistency and planning is really, really key. Now, if you're working 25 jobs with the possibility you're going to fill 5 to 10 of those, do you have the luxury of time to do all of that? Probably not. The second thing that I was going to say is if you're not working a niche market, you will never get anywhere other than the top 20% of candidates that are active, because you don't have the time, because you're working on one job, have a quick look, send out an ad and a mailer, work on the next job. So if you're not working a niche market where you're looking for the same types of candidates over and over again, you're never going to get to this point where you've got that inch wide, mile deep situation. You're always going to be mile wide, inch deep into your market. So I think we can talk all day about how to attract them, but there are some very, very fundamental core mistakes that we make as recruiters that prevent us. They block us, don't they, James?
Yeah, I think what I liked about what you said there, Joe, is the fact that, you know, less is more in this scenario. You know, if you want to build relationships with candidates because you know that's good for your business long term, then you've got to work on less. You can't spread yourself so thin that you're out there. And when you're doing a search, searching for candidates, you need time. Because if you're under the pressure, the time pressure, the fact if I don't get the CV in there, and we've all done it, we've sent a CV to a client, the client says, I've already got it because somebody had a faster finger than you did. And that's why if you can actually learn the process of actually retaining clients, you have the, let's call it the luxury of time, because we talk very much when we're talking with clients by employers, to working with employers to say, listen, this is how long a good search takes. My job is to search the whole market. And therefore, to go into that process of getting the active and the passive candidates, because listen, anybody can find the active candidates. You stick an advert on somewhere or search a database and you'll find that. And I remember there's a great diagram. It came from Greg Savage, and people probably familiar with Greg Savage in the industry, well-respected voice, Australian guy, and he runs a blog called The Savage Truth, worth looking up for people because he has some really good information about that. And I remember this diagram had 2 circles, and it said, in the middle is clients and candidates. In the middle is where everybody operates, touching the active candidates and the active clients. And where you need to be as a consultative, recruiter is you need to be on the other side, actually targeting the passive relationships, both with clients, because, how many times have we approached a client? So listen, I'm looking for somebody. Wouldn't have to be you, would it? So we can approach them on both sides sometimes. But look at that. And I think that's to say to people, if you've got the time, if you can generate the time to do the job properly, you'll have a better work experience yourself. You'll enjoy your job more because it's not frenetic and frantic and being pressurized. Like, I've got to get that CV in today. You actually have a structured process for the candidates that you can tell. So when we're talking to candidates, we say, listen, here's my process. I've been retained by my client. You know, I'm talking to you because at the outset you look as if you have the right type of skill set. But you know, just so you're aware, the first interviews with my client are on such and such a day, and we program with the clients because we say, you know, a search, depending on the complexity, it's going to take 2 to 4 weeks. Might be 2 weeks, could be 4 weeks, particularly in this market where it can be harder to dig out, you know, the passive, you know, candidate who's the right one for the client. But we then say this, we can project when the process is, so we're not rushing. And that means the experience for the candidate, because they look at you with more respect, because they know that you're a retained consultant, and they'll open up to you a little bit more. They won't be as secretive as they sometimes are. Because they're, you know, they've got, hey, listen, yeah, that they don't have the greatest of respect for recruiters. And that's why we always say we don't see ourselves as recruiters. We see ourselves as management consultants who specialize in talent acquisition for such and such a sector. And by positioning ourselves differently, the candidates will, you know, they start to respect us a lot more. And I'd say, yeah, that fun game that we all play, go and type these 2 words into Google, you know, recruiters are, and see what pops up. And, you know, and that shows you the lack of respect for our sector. So that's why we've got to sort of try and change this, you know, professionalize. We can't, you know, we're not going to change the whole industry, because, you know, that's just, you know, too big a task. But actually, in your own sphere, you can change the way that you work by working on less is more, and that's by getting clients through. Yeah. So why don't we move on and talk about some of the techniques that we use with regards to, you know, making ourselves a bit more attractive. You know, so should we move on?
Yeah, good. Yeah, absolutely. One of the points, brilliant segue, by the way, one of the points that we just made then is treat candidates how you would want to be treated. And it's kind of true to a certain degree, but not all people are the same. So you have to treat candidates how they want to be treated. You have to sell what they want to buy, not what you want to sell. So as recruiters, again, got lots of this going on today. As recruiters, we see, I think we mistake parts of our job as being admin focused as opposed to sales focused. So when you're putting an advert on, for example, to attract really, really great candidates from within the full active, semi-active, semi-passive and passive marketplace, do we see that as an admin task or a sales task? Well, a lot of people see it as an admin task. It's just something they've got to go through. Similarly, when they're emailing candidates or when they're voicemailing candidates or reaching out on LinkedIn, I'm going to send the same message out 50 times and then wonder why nobody comes back to me. And what we're doing is we're transacting with people in a very superficial way. And if you were on the receiving end of that message, I always try and send yourself a voicemail, listen to it and think, would I respond to that? So, you know, we have to think about things from a different perspective. It's not how do you want to sell? It's how do these people want to buy? And that brings us, I think, really nicely to the fact that there are lots of 2-page bits of paper. We talk about this a lot. Lots of bits of paper flying around in this process. And if you've gone through the very sometimes long-winded, relentless marathon mentality like process of trying to engage with somebody, and you finally get someone on the phone, you're having a conversation with them, and the first word out of your mouth is, can you send me a copy of your up-to-date CV? 20% of people have CVs. The other 80% don't have up-to-date CVs. So don't ask them for something they don't have. Let's stop talking about CVs and start talking about people. So we're going to disregard that 2-page document for now. The second thing is we're then talking to them on the phone. We're telling them about this great job. And then we say, okay, look, let me send you the job description. And we send them, lo and behold, another 2-page document with no pictures. It's not a sales document. It's not marketing collateral. It's a user manual. And as much as candidates, of course, they want to know what they're going to do for a living, but they also want to know what they're going to become and what they're going to receive from this job. So that job spec, we need to change that up, don't we, James? And we need to turn that part of the process into sales as opposed to admin. Because I think asking a candidate to make a decision based on a job description is a bit like asking someone to buy a car from an enormous showroom by just showing them a range of user manuals. Yeah. You know, you've got to, like we say, job specs on steroids. You've got to turn the volume up a bit on these things.
I think the point you made there, Joe, is put yourself in the shoes of the candidate. You know, when we're talking about selling, we say put yourself in the shoes of the client. In this scenario, though, we have to recognize that candidates have a lot of choice at the moment. So think about what makes me more attractive. If I've got the same boring advert, you know, on LinkedIn as everybody else, that, you know, obviously we can talk about, you know, the attention, the headline and all that type of thing. But once I've got that person, once I've ensnared them to at least have a conversation with me, the next step is so important. And if all you do is regurgitate the client 2-page job description that came out of HR, as a 2-page Word document that we're saying boring, 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 and more boring and more boring. And the only thing that's interesting to the candidate is the salary, and that's not enough nowadays because people are looking for the work-life balance. They're looking to know the information. So what we do and what we recommend you do, it's not something we've created, but it's actually thinking about this, as you said, Joe, from a sales perspective. Create a sales document for the candidate. Yeah, think how much time we sometimes prepare for clients in terms of presentations and pitches and PowerPoint shows or Prezi shows, whatever it may be. All that time. We don't think of that in the same way for the candidates. We do, again, we just commoditize them. So our job, what we've put together, is a very detailed candidate information pack or candidate briefing pack. And again, we're able to do this because we're retained. We have the time to do it because this is not a 5-minute document. That's what you call just replacing the 2 pages and putting your logo on the top. That's not what we're talking about here. This is about actually talking with the client about why are you a great organization to work for? Why would I want to come and work for you? And again, say it's like, if you were me, why would I want to come work for you? What are the things you can put in that? Now, nowadays, we can integrate video into that or video links into these documents to show people why they're so information. But give the candidate all the information, put it at their fingertips at the time when you most want to attract them. So putting together this document, which might be 10, 12 pages, outlining the great things about the company. If they're relocating, you can put information about schools and housing and all the things that are important to them if they're moving across the world, for example. About the job, of course, but use imagery. Take images from the client website to make this document look amazing. So make it look as if you care, and you should care about the candidate. And say, listen, I know you're thinking about changing careers, a very big emotional journey for people. It's a considerable task. You try not to change jobs too often, of course. And if you're doing, you want to know that this is the right role. And we'll come to the third point later, in terms of how we're going to help with that as well. But this pack of information is your sales pitch. Here's why you should join this great company. This is what they do. This is what they're about. This is their vision, their values, their mission, whatever it might be. This is the job. This is what you're going to be doing. This is how much you're going to get paid. And more importantly, or not more importantly, as importantly, at the end, tell them the process. So here's what happens after today. Here's what you need to do. You've got this information because you've got the right skills, knowledge, and experience. Now we need to assess and evaluate you to make sure this is a good career move for you, Mr. or Mr. Candidate. And that's when we talk about the fact that when we work with organizations, we have a 96% retention rate. 96% of the people we place are still in a job 1 year later, and 93% 2 years later. Now you might think, why is it not 100%? Well, listen, there's no such thing as a perfect world at this moment in time, but 96% is actually a lot better than most employers. But from the candidate perspective, what does that mean to them? It means that with some certainty, if they change jobs to the job that you're selling, and they've been assessed and evaluated, it looks like it could be a good mid to long-term career move for them. And that's really, really critical. That's sort of one of those things that sort of drags it out for them and makes a candidate realize that you do care about them.
I think this that's such a great point, because exactly like you said, if you're in the 20% bracket of people who are actively looking for a new opportunity, you're going to have a lot of options on the plate, lots of recruiters, going direct to organizations, etc. But if you're open-minded to a potential career opportunity that has to provide something better than what you've got now, or give you something that you don't already have now, so that's that semi-active, semi-passive part of the marketplace, then you have to go through a period of consultation with your candidates. You have to ask lots of questions. You have to get that out of them. It's not just a case of phone up, sell a job over the phone, ask them what they think, send them a job spec, and hope that the candidate manages to sell it to themselves somehow. You're never going to get anything other than that 20%, which is why you end up sending CVs to clients, and clients say, no, I've already got this CV. And then where are you adding the value? Well, you're not doing anything that they or the machines aren't already doing for them. So this idea of a candidate pack is great. And I love the idea that you've got to sell the opportunity to engage the candidate in. But also, candidates want to feel safe. They want to feel safe, and they want to be able to trust us to take them to the next step in their career. So having a very short 10 to 15 minute conversation with a candidate, asking a few peripheral questions, saying, look, I'll send you the job spec. Let's send your CV over to the client, and let's see what happens. I'll come back to you. It's like, you may as well just fling their CV out the window on a motorway. Let's see where it lands. We're not giving that candidate any safety. We're not managing we're not setting any expectations. We're not setting timescales. We're not allowing that candidate to feel as if we as recruitment consultants have got this. And again, there's always the recruiter part of my brain that goes, yeah, but sometimes we don't have that information to give from the clients. Well, you will do if you're building better relationships with better clients in an exclusive, retained way. So part that small not excuse, but barrier to doing this. But you have to be able to explain process to candidates in a way that allows them to feel safe in your company. And I like you, James, and you look like you know what you're doing, and you look like you're professional and credible in your industry, and you look as if you've got a really good switched on process here, because especially at the moment, there's a lot going on. There's a lack of confidence in job markets, in economies, in certain sectors. Add all that onto the top of a lack of confidence in recruiters potentially in general, and you've got the perfect storm for candidates not wanting to work with you. So I think you have to up your game, don't you, James? You've got to, and it might sound silly, oh, a 10-page document isn't going to make the difference between a candidate or not. But it's everything that you put into that document that engages candidates, creates psychological contracts, and starts to engage people and build this level of candidate loyalty for you.
Yeah, and we've used that expression before, Joe, the Zig Ziglar comment. You know, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, and it's this part as well. But just a little other little benefit for everybody in terms of, you know, why we're banging on about these candidate information packs or briefing packs is actually these are part of our sales pitch to the organization. It actually shows the client how far we go and differentiates them, because we ask the client, you know, how would you feel as a candidate if you received this information, this type of information, because we put that as part of our sales pitch. And most clients will say to I'd be really impressed if I received that, because that's not my experience of recruitment. So again, it's not just a candidate focusing. It is actually part of our sales pitch as well. And these candidate information packs that we talk about, we obviously do put these together. You know, we've actually got a lot of experience with this, and obviously part of our training program with our intro. And these are things that we help you with. We provide templates for these type of things. So again, we're not looking for people to sort of, you know, come up with some idea from scratch. And if you do want to get in touch with us and talk to us, then please do look at the link that will appear somewhere in the box to book a consultation with us. Now, before we go to the final piece, Joe, I just wanted to trail something. You know, next week we're actually we have another guest, Joe. We're going to be joined by Mark Whitby. Hopefully, if you're around the world of retained recruitment, you'll know a little bit about Mark. If not, look him up. And we're going to be talking about the future of recruitment. So we're looking forward to having a triumvirate of us on this call next week, Joe. That'll make interesting watching from our perspective. But no, we're looking forward to having Mark join us, because he's well respected in the industry and has got a lot of ideas and information to share with people. So please do join us next week. But as we're into the last third, Joe, or we're actually into the last third, let's talk about our final piece. Over to you.
Okay, good. So one of the things that we get asked quite a lot is, if you go to all this effort to find all these candidates, find the unfindable candidates or the hard to find candidates, should we still be qualifying them in the same way as we would if it's a candidate that's applied for the job? It's almost like, you know, I've headhunted them, surely I've got to treat them, give them special compensation or something. The answer to that is resolutely no, because at the end of the day, you still have to make sure that you're representing the right people to the right companies in the right way. So again, I mean, another often very, very crucial, but often underused or misused part of the process that we at iIntro always recommend that you do is to put some level of scientific and objective assessment in place for us to use to make sure that we're still putting the right people through. Because, I mean, let's all face it, when we're getting to the end of the month, we've not put any money on the board and we can't find any candidates, and suddenly a candidate appears, don't they always tend to look better than they would do if you had loads of money on the board and loads of candidates? So sometimes we have conscious and unconscious bias that makes us make sometimes subjective, not necessarily completely objective decisions about candidates. So we need a way of us being able to be more scientific and objective when we are choosing candidates for our clients. Also, for when the clients are then choosing candidates for themselves. Most companies have relatively unstructured, let's say, gut feeling interview processes, which have been proven to be roughly 57% effective. So if they're just interviewing them based on their CV, they may as well flip a coin and heads you in, tails you're not. So it helps us to have an objective and scientific and very, very methodical, process-driven way of assessing the right people for the right businesses. But also, it works in reverse, doesn't it, James? Because asking a candidate to look at a job spec and then go for a 1-hour interview in order to make probably one of the most important decisions in their lives, which might end up being wrong. Most candidates have had situations where they've had their CVs put forward for a job, never heard back, been for an interview and it's turned out to be completely wrong for them, joined a job and then had to leave at some point within the first year because it's not been right. Those are 3 unacceptable experiences that candidates go through, and experiences that we can get rid of.
Yeah, absolutely. You can mitigate that risk of it turning out to be the wrong job and wasting everybody's time, the candidate's time, because we're talking about candidates today, but also the client's time, because they're interviewing an unsuitable candidate, despite them having an amazing CV.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure, everybody listening to this, there have been times when, as recruiters, and I'm using my words carefully, as recruiters, we put forward a candidate who is spot on, yet the client didn't take them on because they saw something that we didn't, because they've got a different perspective. So what we have to do in our process, and what we do in our process, is we introduce, as you mentioned, Joe, some psychometrics into this, some scientific and objective assessment. Now, the difference that we have in our process is most people who've used it, and many people on this call, on this show, who are listening in, will have actually probably had some experience with providing, whether it's Thomas International, DISC, McQuaig, SHL, Myers-Briggs, whatever. They'll have seen that at some point in a client's recruitment process, normally towards the end, by which time the reality is it's too late. And I say this as somebody who's used it in my process towards the end when I was hiring people to come and join us. And almost it's like a tick box exercise. So I don't want to sort of reject somebody on a piece of paper that's been written by some report that I actually don't believe in. So what we did at our intro is we actually found a way to introduce this as part of our selection process, our candidate selection, and make it a better experience for the candidates as well. Because what we're able to say to the candidate is, listen, we really do care about you staying in the job long term, to ensure that you don't find a job that is where you're seduced into it because either the salary is great or somebody at the interview says, oh yeah, we'll do all those type of things, only to find out further down the track that's not the real organization that you thought you were joining. And by the way, you'll be blamed for that, because when we talk to clients, why did somebody leave? The clients will say, well, they didn't perform very well, they didn't fit in, they just weren't one of us. When we speak to candidates, why are you leaving after less than a year? Well, it's not the job they told me, they're actually unethical, and etc. I'll call them up with all reasons. And these are all things, there's a mismatch of expectations between what the client is looking for and the way they want people to work and the way the candidate likes to work, because we all revert to our normal working style. We all like to be happy doing it my way. Yeah. Now, if my way is the opposite of your way, Joe, then we're going to clash. Yeah, because you're going to say, well, no, you do it my way. It's my way or the highway. And I'll say, well, it's not the way I do it. And during the honeymoon period, everybody's nicey, and then all of a sudden, that's why we see, we see things when things go wrong. They normally go wrong between months 3 and 9. In terms of when you really get past that honeymoon period, which unfortunately for the employer is past the normal 3-month rebate system that a recruiter will offer. And from that perspective, it doesn't really matter then, can it? So what we do is we actually introduce it into our process pre-interview. And what this means for the candidate is that we can safely say that not only can you do the job with the client, but actually based on the report that we've generated with the client that we've matched you to, we know that you will like working for this client, because they work the way you like to work. Joe, I work the same way as you, so therefore we're more likely to get on. We're not going to be having needless clashes over, it's my way. No, it's my way. We're not going to have those. And that's one of the processes that we put into our intro that means that we can go to our clients and confidently show them that not only, do we find people who can do the job, but we'll find people who will do the job for you. And that's a critical difference when we're out there in the marketplace.
Massively. I mean, as recruiters, again, I think we assess skill all the time. You can look at a CV and you go, yeah, this person can do the job standing on their heads. We qualify them and we interview them based on can they do the job. We might ask a couple of questions about motivations. Interesting fact, most people don't actually know what they're motivated by. So when they tell you what they're motivated by, it's probably not the actual reason. So you have to go deeper than that anyway. But a really good way of getting that out is by doing some sort of psychometric, so that you can actually find out not just can this person do the job, because that's only half the battle won, but will they do it? And will they want to do it once the honeymoon period has worn off? It's one of the absolute game set and match points for me when I first started talking to you guys a couple of years ago, was the idea that psychometrics have been done for years by businesses. Again, that eye roll, we're always doing psychometrics. This is the only process that I know that psychometrically assesses the job and the candidates. Because there's no point just doing a psychometric on candidates if you don't know what you're trying to. It's like baking a cake without a mold. It's like, oh, I don't know what I'm trying to attach them into.
And that's what I was doing, Joe. That's what I was doing before. I was doing that before.
We all know loads of companies that go, we do DISC, and like you said, they either do it too late or they ignore it or they don't do it properly, or they are objectively and scientifically assessing candidates against a subjective, unstructured job description. Normally, that actually, if you've got 3 internal stakeholders, hiring manager, HR, CTO, or whatever, all involved in the process, they probably don't agree on what they're looking for anyway. So this psychometric is massive. It's a game changer. It's an absolute game changer.
I think there's something we might be able to devote another episode to this later on. And I'm just conscious. I do really appreciate that everybody who's been listening in today. I hope we've given you some good little hints and tips. If you do want to get
guys. Hi, Andrew.
Yeah,
hi, Storm.
Great. Do click the link below and book some time with us. It's totally free of charge. We'll share with you our thoughts and how we think we can help you make a difference to your business. So once again, thank you very much for listening. We look forward to seeing you next week, The Future of Recruitment with Mark Whitby. So as of now, it's 10 o'clock. So it's goodbye from me.
It's goodbye from me. Have a great week,
See you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.